Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the Aorus FI32U monitor. Now, I've reviewed the Gigabyte M32U a few months ago, and I know the Aorus is the more extreme gaming portion of their brand, just like some other brands do, but I didn't realize just how similar these monitors are. They're so similar that I've decided to change up the style of my review here and do a comparison video wrapped into a review. To start, I'll cover the spec similarities and then shift over to the differences. Along the way, I'll talk about what I like and don't like, but I'll make sure to do a quick recap of those points at the end. I won't be covering the in-panel settings to the degree I did with the M32U just to save time here, because these look so similar in that regard. You can watch that video to get a close enough idea of what certain presets will look like, but I will be covering a lot of what is in the panel for comparison, so hopefully that does give enough for most people that you don't have to go watch that other review unless you just want to. Starting with the specs, let's go through the big list of similarities here. These are both 4K 32-inch 144Hz IPS panels with FreeSync Premium Pro and cover 90% of the DCI P3 color space and 123% of the sRGB color space. Both have a typical brightness of 350 nits, a 1000:1 contrast ratio, 10-bit color, which is 8-bit plus FRC on both, and VESA certified HDR 400 with 16 local dimming zones. Both have flicker-free technology, high bitrate 3, picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture, and are VESA compatible with a 100mm by 100mm pattern if you want to mount this. And last, these both mostly have the same ports here with 2 HDMI 2.1 for next-gen consoles, 1 DP 1.4, 1 USB Type-C, and a headphone jack. Shifting over, let's get into the middle ground where these have similar specs but slightly different. For the USB ports, the M32U has 3 and the FI32U has 2. Both have built-in power, but the M32U consumes 140 watts while the FI32U consumes 120 watts. For mechanical adjustments, they can both have a height adjustment of 130mm, and they both can tilt 5 degrees forwards and 20 degrees backwards. The M32U can swivel 30 degrees to the left and the right, while the FI32U can only swivel 20 degrees to the left and the right, but the FI32U can pivot 90 degrees and the M32U can't pivot at all. The panel menu on both are the same, but the color on the M32U is orange, and on the FI32U it's blue. Keeping with the middle ground stuff here, let's look at the HDR, which these are both VESA certified HDR 400 with 16 local dimming zones, but the options in the menu are slightly different here for the adjustments that you can make. Now, once HDR is enabled, the FI32U has 3 different modes: HDR 400, HDR Game, and HDR Movie. The M32U just has HDR here. Inside of the HDR menu, you can adjust brightness, contrast, dark enhance, color enhance, light enhance, and local dimming. The M32U has all of these same options except for contrast, which you can't adjust. The HDR 400 with the FI32U doesn't allow you to adjust anything, as it's more of a set preset here. For both monitors, if you enable local dimming, you won't be able to adjust the brightness, and you won't be able to adjust the contrast with the FI32U either. This doesn't have true 10-bit color here, it's 8-bit with FRC, although that will really only matter to people doing in-depth photo or video editing, but it's something to be aware of. I do like that the FI32U has more options for HDR over the M32U, but as an overall package for both of these, I still feel that they're a little bit lacking, and I was expecting a little bit more from the Aorus. It's still decent, but if you're needing top tier HDR, this is definitely not going to be it. Now, I like that they're both certified HDR 400 with VESA, but at this price point, I think it would have been better to have HDR 600 and to have more local dimming zones. This only has 16 and it doesn't need the same amount that you find with other monitors, but to have more would have made this feel like the HDR is definitely worth it. Where here, it's good, and I don't want to knock it down a ton, but again, at this price point, it definitely feels like I should get more out of it. Now, as I do increase certain things like, hey, I want more nits, I want more local dimming zones, it's going to increase the price. And at the normal price, this is normally $1,000. That would actually be my expectation, because from there I could pay $300 more and get the Samsung Neo G7 with HDR 1000 and 1196 local dimming zones with a 1000R curve instead of the flat panel that this has. So at that price point, if I paid a little bit extra, you can get top tier HDR with that. Or you could look into OLED. A lot of new OLEDs are coming to the market, and with that you're getting the big contrast ratio, the infinite blacks, the ton of local dimming zones, but that also comes at a very premium price with that. So that's something to consider. Are you needing that top tier HDR experience? And also, what is your budget? So the HDR here overall could be much better. Now, I've played a handful of games in HDR on PC, the PlayStation 5, and the Xbox Series X, and they all still look good. But again, at this price point, I would expect a little bit more. Now, casual gamers won't notice a big difference, but for me, I actually just finished reviewing the Neo G7 and G9, and those have a ton of local dimming zones with it, and it's also a different panel, but the high nits, the local dimming zones, it all made for an amazing HDR experience, and coming from that to this, it was a noticeable difference. Now, it's still good enough that I actually use this HDR more than I've used with other monitors I've reviewed in the past with the same HDR specs, so I would say it's definitely way better than those, and on consoles I actually prefer it. It's just this weird middle space that I find myself with the HDR here, where in a certain regard it's actually pretty good, but also it's not compared to what's actually on the market right now. Now, I briefly brought up the price a minute ago, and this is actually going to shift us over to the main differences here. And so with the price, this is normally $1,000, and that is where my expectation for the HDR is higher. Again, I could pay $300 more and I can get the Samsung Neo G7, better HDR, more local dimming zones, and all the different features that has. But with this, I actually got mine on sale. So I've seen sales as low as $649 for this, and it's actually what I got mine at for Amazon Prime Day. And so this is where it becomes a little bit interesting. This is where if you could tell, there's like some hesitancy where I'm talking about the HDR here, because at $650, that's where I kind of changed my opinion a little bit. And I think that the HDR here is pretty solid. If I'm going to pay $1,000, again, my expectation is way higher, but at $650, it's good. And it also shifts this from a true negative over to more of a gray area. It really just depends on what you need, because again, you do have those options for other monitors that have top tier HDR, but do you need that or not? Because that's a bigger leap now. $650 up to $1,300 for the Samsung Neo G7, that's a lot of money. So with this, I would still like the higher nits, I would like the more local dimming zones, but I don't want to be as harsh on the HDR here because I paid $350 less than the normal price here. I actually paid less for this than I did my M32U. Which that I actually paid $739 for. I've seen that as low as $679, and the normal asking price is $799. Again, I paid less for the FI32U than I did for the M32U, and there are frequent sales on both of these monitors. If you catch it at the right time, you can get a really good deal. I actually haven't seen it back at its normal asking price for either of these monitors, and I'm expecting that for Black Friday, we're gonna see huge deals on these as well, and this is where it could be a really good monitor to pick up. Now, just looking at the normal asking price, $799 for the M32U, the FI32U is $999, so we have a $200 price difference there. But again, if you play your cards right, you can actually get the FI32U potentially for cheaper than the M32U. So then it's really going to boil down to what is your preference between these two monitors and the features that they have. And with these frequent sales, I'm wondering if Gigabyte is cleaning house on these two monitors, because we're going to see the next wave of their 4K monitors coming through. So they're just trying to clean up stock and get rid of it. That's just my suspicion with this, because I know this time of year we do start seeing more monitors come out, but take advantage of that if you can. Alright, so now that I've covered my big spiel about the price here, let's continue on the differences between these two monitors. The M32U is a 1 millisecond MPRT motion picture response time, while the FI32U is a 1 millisecond G2G gray to gray response time. Now, both of these monitors have the same overdrive settings. This includes Smart Overdrive, Picture Quality, balance, and speed. With the FI32U, there is a visible difference with all of these, so I actually see less ghosting, inverse ghosting, or black smearing across any of these settings. If you want more in-depth information though, I would recommend Hardware Unboxed if you're actually wanting to see what these response times are and the measurements. I don't have a trail pursuit camera, so I can't actually video this and give good images of this, unfortunately, and I don't have the tech to actually measure these things to showcase, hey, are they actually getting these same numbers that they're advertising? Meaning, is this truly a 1 millisecond gray-to-gray response time? And with the M32U, is it truly a 1 millisecond motion picture response time? And then across all of the different settings, when you're looking at the smart overdrive, picture quality, balance, and speed, how does that actually affect the response time as well? So like I said, I will have links for their videos in the description if you actually want to look at those. But in general, there is a visible difference. Overall, both of these monitors, the response time to me visually looks really, really good, but the M32U definitely has more ghosting, inverse ghosting, black trailing compared to the FI32U, which looks just cleaner and sharper when it comes to the image that's in motion. The M32U has two 3-watt speakers, while the FI32U doesn't have any, but it has the ESS Saber chip built in and a microphone jack that has ANC built into that. And that can provide up to 120 decibels of signal to noise ratio playback quality. And this has support for 600 ohm headphones for consoles. Now this is where some of this becomes confusing because the way Aorus outlines all of this makes it hard to understand, at least for me. For consoles, you have to use the line in, as I wasn't able to get any HDMI pass through to utilize the headphone jack or microphone inputs. I unfortunately wasn't able to truly test the ANC because of this, and I used a USB Type-C input, that didn't work, and then I used the regular USB Type-A input, that didn't work as well. So the only thing I was able to actually do was use that line in. So overall, the confusion around this led to more frustration than it seems worth. So for consoles, you'll need to use the line in input, and for PC, you can use the headphone jack input or the line in. So for PC, I had the option to use either, and the ESS showed up once for a USB headset and then it disappeared. So I could never actually get it to come back, so I wasn't able to test that either. I don't own a super high-end headset that can do the 600 ohms, so if the audio is top tier on this thing, it's lost on me. You can turn the 600R off in the menu, and when you do, it just seems like everything's a little bit more quiet. When you turn it on, it just gives it a little bit of a boost. So I'm sure there are going to be some people yelling at me at this point in the comments, but if you're like me and just like to keep it simple, hopefully knowing where to plug your headset in for consoles versus PC will actually help you at this point. I will put a link for a thread on Reddit where a lot of people are discussing this same issue as well if you're having anything else going on. Both monitors have a KVM switch, but they are different, with the M32U being a physical button allowing you to switch inputs, and the FI32U doesn't have a physical button at all, so it's actually turned on through the menu. Both work great, although it's not a feature I personally use, but having the option here if I ever do need it is very nice. Both menu buttons are a single button. The Gigabyte is on the right backhand side of the panel, and the Aorus is underneath the middle of the panel. And that's going to round out the main differences between these two monitors. So now let's do a recap of what I like about this monitor. Now, when I did my review of the M32U, I said it was one of my favorite 4K monitors to date. So it should be no surprise here that I can say the same about the Aorus. As an overall package, this is a great 4K monitor with amazing colors, and the blacks here look decent and to my eyes seem comparable to most of the VA panels I've used outside of the very expensive ones like the Neo G7. And this isn't going to touch the infinite blacks of OLEDs because this only has a 1000:1 contrast ratio, but with some adjustments you can make this look pretty good. Continuing on, this has a fast response time, solid HDR at the lower price point if you can get it instead of the normal price point. It has great aesthetics, top-notch performance with consoles, and plenty of options in the menu. The price and specs here make it a middle-of-the-road monitor, with it not quite hitting the budget price of some 1440p monitors that you can find for $200 to $300, and it's not $1,200 to $2,300 like some high-end 4K monitors. I think both of these find the right balance of specs along with price, and thinking back to 4 years ago when I bought a 34-inch 1440p ultra-wide IPS panel monitor with a 100Hz refresh rate for $900, this feels like it's the right time in terms of price and specs to adopt 4K if you can afford it. If you can and you don't need top tier monitors like the Samsung Neo G7 or G8, then this will boil down to what you personally want. If you need the faster response time, more options with HDR settings, a pivot mechanical adjustment, gamer aesthetics with RGB lights, the ESS Saber chip with the ANC built in, and the ability to utilize and support 600 ohm headsets if you can get it to work, then this is the monitor for you. If you don't care about gamer aesthetics with RGB lights, you need built-in speakers, you want a physical KVM switch instead of the one in the menu, you don't need pivot for a mechanical adjustment but need more swivel, and don't need extra adjustments for HDR, then the M32U would be the monitor for you. I think with the prices being so close now that's going to be a large factor for people looking at these also. They are close enough in price that I could see people just going for whatever monitor is the cheapest at the moment. Next, I want to do a recap of the negatives here just to make it more clean cut because I kind of had them spaced out. But the HDR here, I talked a lot about that. I don't want to go over the whole thing again, but I wish it was true 10-bit color instead of the 8-bit with FRC. I do wish we had HDR 600 here instead of 400, and then overall more local dimming zones with that normal price tag. If you're going to get it on sale, again, not going to be as harsh with that judgment on it, but even then, I still wish it was just a little bit better for the $650, $700. Last, the headphones, and yeah, it has the ANC, you have the 600 ohm ability with this. I just couldn't get mine to work, so I don't know what's going on with that. So I think part of that is going to be user error. That is definitely on me. The other part is it's just not clean cut and defined with how to actually utilize this stuff. And maybe I have a panel that's just messed up and it's not working. That could be the instance with this also. But there was just a tremendous amount of frustration overall with this. And if you are having trouble on consoles, I do want to reiterate, just do the line in and it should get that working for you. I usually have a gray area section in my reviews. I don't really have that for this one just because of how I was breaking the comparison down with this. So hopefully along the way, if there's certain things I was talking about where you're like, I don't really care about that, that would be a gray area thing for you. So overall, I am extremely happy with this monitor. I can't recommend the Aorus FI32U and the Gigabyte M32U enough. These are very, very good monitors, both for consoles and PC. I do both, so it's a great fit for me. I'm going to have a link for both of those in the description if you want to pick it up. If you have any questions about these too, maybe there's something that I didn't cover or answer in this video, let me know in the comment section. And that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Let me know what you think of the comparison review style that I did with this one, and if that's something that you would want to see in future videos. If you like the video, hit the like button for me. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me, and I will see you guys in the next video.